this episode we're going to do the tier maker with all the 2023 stainless steel Rolex watches. So this means all these watches come on a stainless steel bracelet, either the Jubilee or the Oyster bracelet, and they also come with a stainless steel case. Only a few exceptions over here, like the Datejust watches, have a white gold bezel, or the Sky Dweller watches, which also come with a white gold bezel. But in general, a watch enthusiast would put all of these watches into the stainless steel category. And by that, those will come at the most affordable prices from the Rolex watch portfolio, but also, as you probably know, all these stainless steel watches are the hardest Rolex watches to get from your local store. For the categories, I removed the S, A, B, C, D, E tier because I think it makes more sense to categorize them as walk-in, known person, and so on. So what does it mean, walk-in? Walk-in means you're someone who's going for the first time to your local Rolex store. They don't really know you, and during your first visit, you just tell them that you're interested in one particular watch. Then we have the category known person, and this means you visited the store quite a few times already. Maybe you even bought something before over there, but in general, you're not very frequent in contact with them. It's just every now and then that you drop by, or maybe you even have the contact number of one of the sales employees and you're in touch with them via WhatsApp. Next category is the frequent buyer category. This means you bought quite a few more watches over the past over there, and by that you build a good profile with them, you have a history, and of course they know you by then. In the next category, you are one of their top customers, and this means you have quite a good spend history with the store already, and you did several purchases over the last maybe 2, 3 or even more years. And in general, your profile and the amount of money you spend in the store is much more than the biggest chunk of their customers is usually spending over there. And the last category is the super VIP client. This means every time you go to the store, you will spend a ton of money over there. You bought a quite high amount of watches there already, probably in the double digit already. And some of these watches might be even some heavy hitters like a full gold watch or some highly complicated watches. And to bring it a bit into numbers, of course it will vary from region to region. In areas where there is a high amount of high earners, the threshold will probably be a bit higher to get certain watches, but let's say in general, walk-in will probably have zero, no spend history. A known person is someone who bought maybe up to 2 watches already, so somewhere below 20,000 US dollars maybe. A frequent buyer will then be a bit broader, from somewhere like $20,000 to maybe maybe a $200,000 in the strong areas. And the top customer will have a profile with $200,000 and above, and a VIP client might start somewhere from a million US dollars and more than that. Yeah, seems maybe a bit tough, but I guess this is pretty much how it is over here in Dubai. So for the first watch, we have the Oyster Perpetual with the black sunburst dial. As you know, when those Oyster Perpetuals were launched, there was a super high demand for them, and especially for the stellar dials. So stellar dials are the Tiffany or the turquoise, the green, red and yellow, and those sunburst dials were a little bit less in demand. Still, with the lowest price point of any Rolex, the Oyster Perpetual is still very, very high in demand and pretty hard to get. But with a sunburst dial, you might be lucky. Probably not a piece that you can get as a walk-in, but if you went to the store the first time, you told them your interest about one of these sunburst dial Oyster Perpetuals, and you follow up every now and then, I guess you will get it even without a big profile. So I'll put it in the known person category. Next we have the pink dial, and this is one of those so-called stellar dials. So there's quite a big demand for these pieces. The good thing is maybe that the dial is more for ladies. I guess less men will like a pink dial watch. and especially this watch looks also a bit more feminine than, for example, like a salmon dial watch or so. So I would put this into the frequent buyer category. Even it might be a piece also for top customers, but if you bought a few watches there before, they know you're not a flipper. I think even as a frequent buyer, you can get this piece. Next, we have the blue dial, Oyster Perpetual 36. I would say this is a bit more in demand than the black dial, but again, somehow these sunburst dial Oyster Perpetuals are quite easy in comparison to many other stainless steel watches, so I would put it also in the known person category. Could be actually a first Rolex watch for you, and by that a very nice piece that you would acquire. Then we have the turquoise dial, or how many people will call it, the Tiffany, and this is definitely a lot harder than the pink dial. It was selling, if I remember correctly, somewhere in the range of $30,000 to $40,000, while it's somewhere like a $6,000 piece only. So this is definitely a piece only for top customers. And yeah, probably with 2, 3, 4 watches that you bought as a frequent buyer, you're still not eligible to get a turquoise style Oyster Perpetual 36. And then we have the Oyster Perpetual 36 with the celebration style, and there are not many out of them yet in the market, but those that you can find in the market are trading for very high prices. I think they're somewhere around $30,000 to $40,000, so probably at the price point where the Tiffany was shortly after the release. So again, all the stores will know that this is a very high in demand piece, so I would put it in the VIP client category. Very, very hard to get this. Next, we have the green dial, Oyster Perpetual 36. Again, this counts into the stellar dial category, so definitely a very high demand on it. But I think it trades a little bit higher, lower actually than the pink dial. And also from what I see, quite a few of my friends, they actually got this piece, and they are all somewhere around the frequent buyer category. Next, we have the silver dial, and this falls under the sunburst category of the Oyster Perpetuals. Again, it's the 36 millimeters, so 36 millimeters is also a little bit less in demand than the 41 millimeter. And on top, the silver dial, I think, is the one that's also the least in demand. So probably if you're maybe super lucky, they will probably not have it in the display, but if you find a good connection to the store employee and they really like you, they might give it to you as a walk-in. It's definitely somewhere between known person to walk-in. So yeah, maybe with the current market trend, I would put it in the walk-in category. Again, don't take this for granted. It will vary and nothing is guaranteed of these watches to get them from these categories. But I think if you're really lucky, from all the watches you can see below, this is definitely a piece that you might be able to get as a walk-in. And exactly the same for the black dial. It's a little bit more in demand than the silver dial. But again, if you find a very good connection as a walk-in client to one of those stores, they might be able to sell you one of these. Then we have the 41 millimeters blue dial, falls again in the known person category, and the 41 millimeters celebration dial for the Oyster Perpetuals also falls into the VIP client category. 41 millimeter OP 41, again, I would say it could already be a top customer piece, but I'll probably still put it in the frequent buyer. But it definitely is very hard to get it. It's somewhere in between, but let's put it still in the frequent buyer category. And then the 41 millimeters silver dial, yeah, it's somewhere in between known person and walk-in. I'll put it also in walk-in. Good. With that, we have all the Oyster Perpetuals ranked. So you can see the red one is already discontinued, and also yellow one I couldn't find on the homepage anymore. So by that, you know roughly how hard these watches are to get. Next, we come to the Datejust models, and I think these are very interesting because for a very long time those Datejust watches were usually the ones that you could buy as a walk-in, but with the crazy Rolex demand peak over the last 2 or 3 years, they became also harder and harder. Now with the changing market, they are getting a little bit easier again. again to get, and those are usually great first purchases. So all of the Datejust watches you can see here, they are pretty much, let's say, trading maybe at or above retail, and if you start building a profile with them, you can definitely not go wrong. So first piece is this black dial Datejust 36, has a smooth bezel on it, and those are usually less in demand than the white gold fluted bezel versions. So I would put this as a walk-in category. Then we have the silver dial. Again, it's the least in demand dial, usually silver and white. Everyone prefers some more colorful dials at the moment with the trend at least. So again, this one falls in the walk-in category. And last, the Datejust 36 with the white dial and the Roman numerals. I think this is even lower in demand than the silver sunburst dial, so also this falls into the walk-in category. Now it's getting a bit more interesting. Over here we have a so-called Wimbledon dial. So we have this grayish dial with the white gold bezel and Jubilee bracelet. This is the best combination, I guess, that you can get from your local Rolex store. Still, of course, it's a Datejust and it's in 36 millimeters, so it's less in demand than if it would be a 41. So probably I would say, as a known person, yeah, you probably can get this. But it's often, when the market is hot, it probably trends more into the frequent buyer category. But in the current situation, I guess you can get it as a known person. Then we have the blue dial, and the blue dial is usually right behind the Wimbledon dial. Again, in the combination fluted bezel, Jubilee bracelet, blue dial. Everyone is lusting for this, but again, also 36 millimeters. So again, would put it into the known person category. Here we have the new fluted dial, and that's interesting. These fluted dials seem to be very hard to get, at least. From what I see, they are less common than the normal sunburst dials. So I would put the fluted dial, yeah, probably in the frequent buyer category, even though it's only a 36 millimeters watch. And then we have the new green dial. Again, these are also high in demand, but also over here I see a similar picture like with the blue dial. The fluted dial, very hard to get, but the green sunburst dials, if they know you, if they trust you, if you have a good relationship with them, you can probably get them as a known person. Next we have the palm dial, again in the best combination with fluted bezel and Jubilee bracelet. And this palm dial somehow is very hard to get. You never really see them in the wild. I don't know many people who got them. I guess only one of my friends got one of these, and he actually waited quite a long time for it. Had a good profile, definitely bought more than 2 watches. And whenever I go somewhere, I usually ask for this piece, but I never got lucky. So I would put it in the frequent buyer category with a tendency. Now I think it's well positioned over there, right in the middle of the frequent buyer category. And next we have a blue dial. So I took this as an example, but with diamonds on the dial, and these come obviously at a much higher price point than the normal dials with the stick or Roman numerals. And these diamond dials are usually a lot less in demand. So this probably, so for sure the silver, black, white dials and so on with diamonds you can get as a walk-in. But if you really push hard, you probably can get even a blue dial as a walk-in. Next we have a pink dial, and so again I would put it in the walk-in category. Definitely a lot easier than the blue dials, but I feel like Rolex is also producing less of these pink dials, and sometimes there is a trend in the market and suddenly you can't get them anymore. But in general, you should be able to find these also as a walk-in. Then we have the 41 millimeters, which are much harder usually to get than the 36 mm. And here we have the, I would say, top seller Datejust, the Wimbledon dial, 41 millimeters, fluted bezel, Jubilee bracelet. Definitely super hard to get, probably still trading maybe $2,000-3,000 over retail price. So yeah, if you're looking for a Datejust and you want to have the hardest Datejust to get, I would probably put it still same like the palm dial green, but again, very hard to get. Definitely something they usually give to their frequent customers. Next, we have a blue dial, Datejust 41. I would say it falls somewhere in between frequent buyer, known person. Depends probably a little bit on the region. In Dubai, this is definitely very hard to get. In a region where there's not so much demand for Rolex, probably a bit easier. So I would put it in the known person category. Even heard about a few people who got this as the first Rolex as a walk-in, but I would say in general it falls more into the known person category. Then we have one of these new fluted dials in with the green dial, and this I think is even harder than the blue fluted dial to get. On top it's a 41 millimeters, so again definitely falls into the frequent buyer category. Next we have interesting Datejust 41 with the Oyster bracelet and the steel bezel, and this is, let's say, the sorry to say it like that, but maybe the worst combination, or the watch that is not really in demand like all those Jubilee bracelets. And this one definitely falls into the walk-in category. Still, it's definitely tougher than getting a two-tone, but in comparison to all these stainless steel watches, it's definitely one of the easiest, or maybe the easiest of the whole pack over here. And yeah, same goes for the silver dial. Again, I guess silver dial is a little bit less in demand than the black dial, but both of them are quite easy to get. Moving on, we have the Submariner no date. So this is actually an interesting piece. As you know, there's 3 different Submariner steel available: the no date, the date, and the date Kermit or Starbucks, or however you want to call it. And if I remember correct, I think the date is trading a little bit higher on the secondhand market. But from my feeling, how the Rolex ADs are giving out these watches, I think there are less of the no date versions. I might put them in the same category, but if you ask me, the no date, at least from an authorized dealer, seems to be a bit harder to get than the date. So it will fall in, I guess, in the frequent buyer category in the current market. Good, and coming to that, here's the Submariner date version. For a long time it was pretty much impossible to get this watch. In Dubai it's still impossible. You need a profile, and on top the wish list must be open for this piece, and since I don't know, 2 or 3 years, the wish list is closed for a Submariner date. They usually only open it when the reference changes. So, but considering my experiences in other countries, and from what I hear from my friends in, let's say, Germany or the US, I heard even some people got it as a walk-in, but I guess this is definitely the exception. But I also read a lot of stories where people really were aiming for the Submariner date as the first piece, and after a bit of a wait, they actually then got it. Somewhere like 6 months to a year, usually. If you follow up regularly with them, you build a good relationship, and they like your personality. I think you can get it as a known person in the current market. Yeah, it's a bit easier, I would say, than the sub no date, just because of the quantities the ADs receive. So I think here it definitely makes sense. Next we have the Kermit, or the so-called Starbucks, or however you want to name it. And definitely this is the hardest of those 3 Submariners to get. For sure not as hard anymore as it was during the launch, where it was pretty insane. I think after maybe for the first few months after the launch, it was trading also somewhere around $25,000. Now it came down, I think somewhere around maybe $15,000, but still definitely hard to get watch. You probably wait for it. Impossible to get it as a walk-in. So I think it makes sense in the frequent buyer category. Yep. Good. And with that, we have the stainless steel Submariners. So now we come to the GMT Masters, stepping up the game a bit over here. As also in general, I would say GMT Master is harder to get than Submariner. Seems like again the quantities are less that Rolex produces of those GMT watches. For sure, it's a more complicated watch due to the 2 time zones it can show you, and then on top you have the dual color bezel, which is also harder to produce than a single color bezel that you will find on the Submariners. So let's rank them. First piece, the Bad Girl. So you can see it comes on the Jubilee bracelet. That's why many people call it the Bad Girl. I agree on that. For me, it's a bit more feminine, but also my personal choice would be for sure the Bad Girl. I think it looks much better on the Jubilee bracelet than the Oyster bracelet. So where would I put it? It's definitely not as hard as a Pepsi, not as hard as a Sprite or Dextro, but it's a little bit harder than a Kermit for sure. But for a top customer, it's hard to say actually. Definitely a tough one even in the frequent buyer category to get. But I would say, yeah, I'll probably would put it in the frequent buyer category with a very strong tendency to the top customer. But still, if you bought, let's say, 4 or 5 watches already, you know the store for quite a while, you never flipped any of those watches, you keep your good relationship with the store, I think there would be a chance here that you probably get it as a frequent buyer. But again, very, very high tendency to a top customer. Next we have the Batman then, as you can see on the Oyster bracelet. Definitely a frequent buyer watch. Little bit easier, I guess, than the Bad Girl, as the demand is just higher on this piece, and probably they will get the same amount of these two. And if 10 people are waiting for a Bad Girl, but only 5 people are waiting for a Batman, obviously the Batman will be easier to get. But still the demand is super high, so I'll put it in the frequent buyer category. Now we come to the Pepsi. First piece will be the Pepsi on the Oyster bracelet. Again, also here I would say the demand is higher for the Jubilee bracelet, but definitely in general the Pepsi ranks above the Kermit or Dex or Starbucks, and definitely also above the Bad Girl and Batman. So I'll put the Pepsi into the top customer category, as yeah, for sure you need to have a super strong relationship to the store, a really big spend history with them, that they will consider you for this piece. Again, there might be exceptions, like it happened to me, but I'll also contacted around 100, maybe 110 stores around the world until I really found one who knew about my passion for Rolex watches, and at the end he sold me one. But for sure this is a big exception, and usually you will have to go down the route of building a profile with the store, and then for sure the Pepsi will fall into the top customer category. Same goes for the Pepsi on the Jubilee bracelet. As you can imagine, it's a little bit harder to get it, but you don't need to be a VIP client to get a Pepsi. I guess if the store requires that, then you're somewhere in a region where there's like so much buying power that it would maybe make sense to to change to a store that is located somewhere where less rich people are located around that Rolex store. Good, and then we come to the so-called Sprite or Dextro, and this is the lefty. Shortly after release, many people were thinking this will be a VIP client piece only due to the weird design of it. Rolex never made a lefty watch before, but recently I would also say the demand came down for this. Secondhand prices are actually below the Pepsi already. For sure it will be harder to get this than a Batman and Batgirl, I would say. So probably I'll rank it. Yeah, I would rank it also in the top client category, at least the Jubilee bracelet version, which is again a bit more in demand. And yeah, let me put the one on Oyster in the frequent buyer category. I guess there's a good difference in between, and probably this Oyster bracelet, Sprite or Dextro or however you want to call it, ranks somewhere similar to a Bad Girl. So Bad Girl and dextro on Oyster bracelet, very high tendency to top customer, but still as a frequent buyer you can probably get them. Now we have the yeah, the king of all Rolex watches, the Daytona Panda, and this is already the new reference, which looks a little bit more like the old Zenith Daytona with the thinner subdials. And these pieces, I think I haven't even seen one of them anywhere yet. Not sure if they are already on chrono or not. But nevertheless, the Daytona Panda, even before the updated version, was already the hardest to get stainless steel sports model of them all. Even before the hype, it was already a bit tough to get them. So for sure now they are falling into the VIP client category. Super difficult to get them. Here in Dubai you need to wait maybe 5 to 10 years for one. You need to spend more than $1 million to get one, so it's pretty much out of reach for everyone. Or the alternative would be that you're maybe a family member of the authorized dealer, then you might have a better chance to get one without such a big spend history. But for us normal human beings, yeah, it's pretty much out of reach nowadays. Definitely falls into the VIP client category where it's so hard to get one. And yeah, you definitely need to spend a ton of money. Then we have the black one, definitely a little bit easier, but just a little bit. And as the Daytona sits so high on top of this list, also the black dial will fall into the VIP client only category. Next we have an interesting piece not many people are speaking about or talking about. This is the Yachtmaster 40 millimeters with the rhodium dial. Yeah, and this is also one piece that's not fully made of stainless steel. I think this has the platinum bezel, so it's a bit higher in price than a Submariner, even though it delivers less, I would say, because the watch has less water resistance, it's more scratch sensitive, and demand also overall lower due to that, because you just get less for your money at a higher price point. So I'll probably would put this into the known person category. I think it makes sense. Definitely these are in quantities lower than the Submariners, but also the demand is so much lower, so probably you will find them the same like a Submariner date. Then we have the blue dial. It's pretty much the same. I think maybe the rhodium dial is usually a bit more in demand because the turquoise second hand looks quite nice on it, and many people, they don't like actually the red second hand on the blue dial, but yeah, in general they are pretty close to each other. And then we have the Yachtmaster 37. So this watch is a bit small maybe for some. I think you can still pull it off even with a medium sized wrist, and the demand is for sure a lot less than for the 40 millimeter versions. So I could imagine, yeah, it's probably somewhere similar to like an Oyster Perpetual with a black or silver dial. So I'll put it as a walk-in. If you search for it, for sure it will not be sitting in the display waiting for you. But if you have a good conversation, they might have a day at the store where they just want to sell something, and you click to the sales guide, and probably you can pull it off as a walk-in customer. Now, one piece, I really added this as well. So this is actually not a stainless steel watch, but I thought the titanium comes closer to stainless steel than it comes to the precious metals. So I added the new Yachtmaster 42, which is in titanium. It was just released, I think earlier this year at Watches and Wonders, and so far also I've never seen it in real. They had some at the Rolex tour here in Dubai, but I unfortunately missed going there as I was on a business trip. But I also don't know anyone from our watch club or from my friends who got this piece, but I know many people who ordered it. And also the top collectors over here in Dubai, so far I haven't seen anyone getting this watch. So seems like Rolex is making it super tough, and I could imagine, as it's something completely new for them, for now at least, they will only produce it in very small, very limited quantities, and by that it will fall for sure into the VIP client category. This might be a piece actually which will change over time and go lower once Rolex is mastering the production of it. But for now, for sure, it will still be in the VIP client to get one of the first pieces of these. Next, we are coming to the Sea Dweller 43. So with the red lettering on the dial, I think this is still one of the Sea Dwellers that wears quite nice on the wrist. Not too different to a Submariner, even though everything is a bit more bulky on it. But in general, I think the look of it is really, really good. I like the more aggressive bezel on it and the graduation that goes all the way around. Pretty cool piece. In general, the demand will be a little bit lower for this than for a Submariner, but it's still somewhere between walk-in and known person, from my gut feeling now. But yeah, I think it's still more difficult than any of the walk-in watches, and usually it would be very hard to pull this off as a walk-in. So it fits best into the known person category in my view as well. Then we come to the Rolex Deep Sea, and there are actually two versions that I have over here. So this is the normal Deep Sea. It's quite a bulky watch, to be honest. Some people might like it. I think for most wrists it will be too big, very difficult to pull it off unless you really want to wear it for diving. By that also the demand is quite low for it in comparison to the 43mm Sea Dweller and the Submariner, obviously. So I think this is a walk-in watch. If they haven't sold one of these for a while in the store, again, you build the relationship, you connect to the guy. Maybe you're even a diver and you can tell them your story. You might pull this off as a walk-in customer. Could be. Different story for the James Cameron. James Cameron is for sure one of the watches Rolex produces in less quantity, as it's kind of like a celebration piece, you could say, compared to any other of the watches from the known person and walk-in category. Even probably they produce it less than many pieces in the frequent buyer categories like those Datejust or the sub no date. But also again, the demand is a lot less for this piece. Still, as it's a celebration model and produced in small quantities, I'll put it in the frequent buyer category. I think it's not too easy to get this, and they will for sure sell it to some of their regular clients who are really looking for this piece and where they will have a good feeling that it's the right watch for the customer. And then we come to, this is like a bit of a surprise watch, which is also pretty hard for me to rank, to be honest. This is now this, how do they call it? Maybe Deep Sea Challenge or something like that. But yeah, it's the new piece. And again, I don't really see them in the market. They're not trading very high. But again, there will be even smaller quantities probably be produced of this than the James Cameron. But again, also then the demand is smaller. So I'll put it in the frequent buyer category. For sure, it's a very special piece. But again, due to the low demand for it, I could imagine that you can actually get them. Then we come to the Airking. This is also a very interesting piece. It's one of the lower end stainless steel sports watches. Was also recently, or it was actually last year updated. It's already quite a while. I actually ordered one after the release, but also it never arrived. So not too easy to get, but I heard many stories where people actually got them and it was not too difficult. Comparing it to the old Airking, I think they made a fantastic update with the crown guards. It looks a lot better, more sporty. Watch overall got slimmer, so I think it's a fantastic update. Even some of the gray market dealers and so on, they want to tell you a different story, but probably just because they still have some of the old ones they have to sell, so they are trying to hype the old piece to keep the price up. But yeah, in my view, the new one is much better. Case looks better, looks more sporty, fits overall much better to the watch. Fantastic update, new movement. So I really like this piece, but also it's not too hard to get from what I heard around the world. In Dubai, it's still very hard to get it, but I think I would put it in the known person category. Yeah, Probably as a walk-in, tough to get as there will be regular customers who are looking for it. So it's more like you will walk in, you put your name down for this piece, you follow up every now and then, you visit the store again and again, and one day it will come, and by that it fits nicely into the known person category. Next we have the Explorer 36, also interesting piece. I actually got one, and usually I think this is the one of the easiest to pull off full stainless steel sports watches from Rolex. Many people got this as their first sports piece, and now after I think 2 years maybe already since they released this, I think it fits either walk-in or known person. I imagine it to be honest, a little bit easier than the Airking, so I'll put it in the walk-in. For sure, same like the Sea Dweller and the Yachtmaster. Those three are already considered sports watches, different than the rest that you can see here, like Datejust and Oyster Perpetual. So those three are for sure the hardest walk-in pieces. But I guess from the whole sports portfolio, the 36mm Explorer one is the easiest to get. Moving on, then we have the Explorer 40mm, and this ranks similar to the Airking 40mm. Also recent release. Due to that, still there's a bit more hype than on the Airking maybe. But again, the hype will come down a bit and it fits nicely into the known person category. Then we have the Explorer 2. Again, Explorer was never one of those Rolex watches that was super crazy in demand. Even after the recent update, somewhere known person or frequent buyer, difficult one. For sure it's much easier than a Submariner. Probably easier than a Submariner date, and I put the Submariner date in the known person. So I think even though it's really a special piece, has a GMT complication, the white dial is also more in demand than the black dial. But probably it fits in the known person category. Again, also a bit due to the demand, which is not too crazy on this piece, since forever basically never really peaked. So if you know the store, if you wait for it, you'll probably get it. Then we have the black dial. Again, it would be even a bit less in demand than the white dial, but also I never really heard about anyone who got this as a walk-in, so fits very well in the known person category. Now the last part of the video is for the Sky Dweller. Generally a pretty tough watch to get nowadays. Also comes down to the quantities that Rolex produces of this watch, which are probably a lot lower than most of the pieces that you can see over here due to the highly complex movement that's inside. Let's start maybe with the white dial. So again, white dial, oyster bracelet, white gold bezel, the least favorite combination of most people. By that, easiest of the Sky Dwellers that you can get. Still Sky Dweller, very low production. So I would put this, probably it's still because the demand is so much lower than for any of these watches, probably as a known person. And then the black dial goes the same, also known person category. White and black dial is pretty much the same, also on the oyster bracelet. If they would be on a Jubilee, they could tend to the frequent buyer category, as with the recent update. When the Jubilee bracelet on Sky Dweller was freshly introduced, the demand peaked a bit again for all the Sky Dweller watches actually, but now it's already more than a year I think since they made the change. The demand dropped, so even if those two would be on a Jubilee bracelet, I would put them in the known person category. Now we come to a completely different picture. Probably know that the blue dial was for a very long time always the Sky Dweller to get. Completely different than the black and white dial somehow. Even though it's the same watch, it's just the dial color difference. But it seems like people really love the Sky Dweller with the blue dial. I mean, in general, people love Rolex watches with blue dials, but it's really extreme for the Sky Dweller. And this Sky Dweller also, it's very hard to come by, even though the premium on the second-hand market is not even that high anymore. but still it's definitely a piece somewhere between top customers and VIP clients. So I'll probably, oh, it's really hard to say. For sure below the Daytona category, but it's a bit above, I would say, the Dextro. Maybe I'll probably say it's similar to a Pepsi to get this. Maybe it's, yeah, I think, yeah, it makes sense probably to put it here to the top customer category. It's a similar like the Pepsi. So more people will want the Pepsi, but also Rolex probably going to produce more quantities of the Pepsi. Less people want the Blue Dye Sky Dweller, but the production is so limited of this piece that it's still very, very hard to get it with very long waiting times for it. Then we come to the recent release, which is the green dial. And for now, I think the green dial might be trading even higher than the blue dial because it's not too long in the market, but in the future it will probably change in my gut feeling again, and the blue dial will be again the number one, just because it takes a bit of time to get quantities out of them. So for now I would put it also in the top customer category. Again, those two pieces have a strong tendency with the Pepsi Jubilee to the VIP client category, but again, they are somehow with a history with your AD, working together with them for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, buying every now and then a watch, buying jewelry, buying maybe a gold piece. So you have a strong profile there. You spend more than 80% of the other customers. You're one of their top guys. So probably then you can get it, and you don't need to be one of those crazy VIP clients that spends millions at the store. By that you should get it. So this was pretty much the ranking of all the stainless steel Rolex watches from the 2023 portfolio, so that are currently available in theory. As you know, probably your stores will not have all of them there, but there might be a lot of them in the back, in the vault room, wherever. And with that, I think I can give you a bit of an overview how hard it is to get those different pieces. Usually, the more they trade over retail, the harder they will be to get. But there are a few exceptions, like you can see on those sea dwellers or special pieces that are maybe not even trading so high due to less demand, but still are very hard to come by, as Rolex just produces very few of them. And yeah, with that, we have it. Let me know your opinion. Do you agree with my ranking of the Rolex watches? Do you think these categories make sense? Maybe if you like this kind of video, I will do the same also for the two-tone watches and the precious metal watches. Or if we should have one day a celebration episode, I might put all of them into one video. Let me know your opinion in the comments below. Do you like the video? Do you agree on the ranking? How would you rank those watches? And definitely tell me your experience. How did you get any of those watches? What was your category? Where would you fall in? Which watch did you get? Let us all know in the comments below, and see you in the next one. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.